and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Have you ever found yourself staring at a blank page, feeling the weight of endless possibilities? Or maybe you've started a project filled with excitement only to find yourself stuck in the middle, unsure of how to move forward. These are just some of the challenges every creative faces, whether you're a writer, a painter, musician, or any other type of artist. Creativity is a journey filled with peaks and valleys, moments of inspiration, and times of struggle. Have you ever wondered how some creators effortlessly switch genres while others stick to their familiar terrain? What about those daunting middle sections of a project where the initial excitement has worn off and you're left grappling with self-doubt and uncertainty? How do we push through to reach the other side where the work starts to come together again? Our guest today has navigated these waters and emerged with stories to tell. He's a master of character-driven narratives and has made the bold move from horror and supernatural fiction to the realms of fantasy. He's here to share his insights on getting started with writing, the art of self-editing, and the challenges of being a pantser. He knows firsthand the struggles of overcoming that muddled middle and has a wealth of advice for those looking to conquer it. I'm excited to introduce a second-time guest to the show, an international award-winning author and blogger, Jack LaFountain. Jack has penned 7 horror novels, a series of Western fiction, and numerous short story collections. As an editor and partner in a publishing company, he's dedicated to giving new authors a chance to break into the writing world. And I'm thrilled to have him return for season 3 to share more of his journey and wisdom. So, Jack, welcome again, and thank you so much for being here.
No, thanks. It's great to be back. We had such a wonderful conversation last time. I really enjoyed it and glad to be back and get to talk with you again.
I know, me too. I love when guests make a return appearance because to me, it genuinely feels like sitting down with an old friend and just catching up. Like every conversation I have, it sticks with me. I can't tell you when I had them because they're always so fresh in my mind. Like they just kind of stick in my brain. And I can recall, when I sat down and talked to Jack last time, and I'm not going to lie, I've probably shared your name and your publishing house several times with people on Facebook. I'm like, I know a guy. Let me hit you with this guy's name. Like I know a guy. So I'm so glad to have that
Oh,
resource and
yeah.
just to be able to network and that kind of thing. But just because I know you and I've gotten to hear your story doesn't mean that every listener has. So maybe tell us how you first got started with writing and that particular moment that said, I'm going to be a storyteller.
Well, I've always kind of told stories, not so much in writing. I wrote short stories for a long time before I would let anybody look at them. I actually was in college before I kind of got the final push to actually put what I've written out there. I had a sophomore college English teacher that gave me an assignment, and it was supposed to be a true story, and it was a true story. I wrote a true story, and he was decided that was absolutely fiction, that could not have happened. And I kind of got a see me after class type of thing. And when I went and saw him after class, I promised it was absolutely true. The place that I was describing was a very real place. And I ended up getting an A on the assignment, but he wrote a note at the bottom says, your style sounds a lot like a fellow, and his name's just slipped away from me anyways, but and he said he wrote a book called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. And so I had planned to buy the book, and I was going to go get the book, and I was watching The Christmas Story on TV. It was about that time of year, and I noticed that this author had written, that was part of the one of the short stories in the book was The Christmas Story. And I thought, well, okay, if it sounds enough like that he recognized it, I'm going to put it out there and see what happens. And strangely enough, it's gone well. I'm certainly surprised at how well it's gone. Yeah, it really, really, really took me by surprise.
Isn't that the way it goes? Because I was the same way. Like I didn't want to put my work in the world. I didn't want other people to read it. Like that's kind of, I guess, because when you put it out there, you're opening it up for judgment, maybe. I don't know. But I was the same way. I thought, this is part of me, and I'm not sure I'm ready for the world to see it. But as soon as I did, it was kind of like, why haven't you been doing this longer?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had a friend, we were part of a writers group in Washington when I was there. And he had this amazing cast of characters and stories and plots and all, and never wrote a one. And we were all the rest of us in the group said, "Hey, you gotta actually sit down and write this down for us. It's gonna be great." And I don't know whether he ever did or not. I actually moved away before I've seen anything by him. But yeah, you actually got to get out there and do it. Take the chance, and usually, and I've found it most of the time I do that, it turns out better than I think it is. I think it's going to. Uh, Maybe that's just maybe I'm just down on myself for that, but I don't know, or no confidence. I don't know about that.
I don't know either. I mean, you've put out enough books to make me think you've got some kind of streak of confidence there. So maybe
Yeah,
turning out it was
I feel kind of confident, in my writing now. Uh, I understand not everybody likes it, but and that's the way it goes with everybody. And I try to tell new authors that not everybody's going to like what you've written. It doesn't mean that you're writing poorly. It just means that's not something that interests them. They picked it up. That wasn't a subject that interested them. Maybe they thought it would, and then it didn't. But it doesn't mean your writing is not worth putting out there.
exactly.
And
So
I
that's for
found that
sure.
true.
If you see me
Like I said,
holding a gardening book, that means it's a cry for in distress because I'm not going to pick up a gardening book. Like that's not one of those
right?
things that I'm ever going to
Yes,
pick up and read. But you give me
yes,
a fantasy book or a romance book, then yeah, I guarantee you I'm going to eat it for dinner, kind of thing.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one of our authors, he was pretty much devastated because he got a 3-star review, and I, I tried to assure him, no, not so. Actually, if you read that review, they liked your book.
Mhm.
It was just a little slow to start, and for
Yeah.
them to put that out there on the review is good for you because people that pick it up that are interested in the subject you've written, they'll be a little patient with you. Let that first chapter, they'll kind of go through that first chapter, and it'll work. And I think I finally convinced him of that. At least enough so that he wrote a second book. So
Well, that's good. And I tell you, like that first 3-star review, because when you first put your book out there, you have already sent it to people who like you. So chances of you getting less than 5 or 4 stars is pretty slim. So, like your mom's going to leave you a 5-star if she likes
right,
you
right,
and, stuff like that. So when you get that first 3-star review, it is kind of a punch to the gut because you're like, oh no, I'm failing at something. And it's like, no, sometimes I know I am pretty harsh on books. Like I want to be taken away and captivated. And if it doesn't do that for me, then I know my standards and I have them and I stick to them. So it's not you, it's their preference.
yeah. Well, and I do that. Like I'll review books on Goodreads and things, and
Mhm.
you pretty much have to have written a classic to get 5 stars for
Yes. Yes. Yes.
or if not a classic, one that really captured my imagination.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I can read a book, and yeah, I read a friend of mine's not too long ago, and yeah, it's a good book, good story. I gave him 3 stars,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
that's that means I like it, and I did like it, and I wasn't
yes.
sorry that I bought it. It worked out well.
Right.
So
3 stars, it's a good average, right? Like, it's not a bad thing. When you sink below 3 stars and when you do it consistently, that's when you kind of have to put your radar on and be like, oh, maybe there is something wrong with my book. But, for the most part, like I had all 5 stars and 4 stars. I had one 3-star. I was like, okay, but she was also a very harsh critic. Like she was very hard to please. And that's fine because all of her reviews were, 3 stars kind of
yeah,
thing. But
oh
then I
yeah.
got a 2-star. No words, just a 2-star. And I thought, what's wrong with you? Like I wanted to throw some hands.
Yeah, I've done that and actually agreed. Uh, for one thing, when I look at reviews on books, though, if all it's got is 5-star reviews, I don't buy that. Not really. I mean, okay, it's family and friends,
Yep.
and maybe it hasn't gone beyond that yet, and that's fine. But I've got one 2-star review I remember very very clearly, and it's like basically the entire comment was not his best work. So at least they've read they've read the other books. I'll give them that, and maybe I'll agree with that one. And because it went kind of on a different tangent from the rest of the series, it had a little bit different. So yeah, okay, I like
Well,
that. Yeah, I like an honest review, even though it didn't come out so well for me. But
But
Like I said, if I was looking and I was going over the reviews and I saw that, that wouldn't put me off.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I was going to say is that, these reviews and stars that you get, the ratings and that kind of thing, they are for other readers. They're not really meant for authors. And so I think as when new authors are getting out there and stop looking at the reviews. Like
Oh, yeah.
they're going to make you battle yourself internally. They're going to make you question your abilities. And so, that's my advice, because you do want to see that. It makes you feel good. But at the same time, those reviews are for other readers to decide whether or
Right.
not they want to read your work.
Yeah. I don't know much. My editor and I were going over some reviews. He was going to put in the back of one of my books, praise for the author kind of page. Okay, that we do that for everybody. And it's like we're reading this one review, and my thought was, these people have got to be crazy because I'm not that good. But I'll take it,
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, no, I'm gonna hold on to that 5 stars, and it's gonna take me up a notch on a bad day. But yeah.
I said, yeah, you can go ahead and put that one in the back of the book. That'll be okay.
That's right. And that's what we do. That's what we do as authors. We want other people to read our books. Therefore, we're going to share the best. But at the same time, your book is not for every reader, and that is fine. My books are not for every reader. They have their audience. They have the people they're meant for. And when somebody they're not meant for gets a hold of it, well, that's when you just smile and nod and say, thanks for making the purchase.
Well, that's why I'm wondering how my new one is going to go, because I did make the jump from horror, which most people that read my books, that's the one they key in on. There are a few that are fans of the Man of God series, which is strictly a Christian Western series. But looking to see how the fantasy goes. And one thing, hopefully, that will maybe encourage other writers out there. I came up with the idea for this book about 10 years ago.
Okay.
All I had for this book was the opening scene. I had a picture in my mind of the opening scene of this part human creature headed towards a city, and I worked on it, tried to get around the idea. Well, okay, what comes next? What's the story even about? Okay, and nothing. And I went. I'd been at least a year, and my grandson, he was in, I think, 3rd grade at the time, and so he wanted to be like Grandpa. So he wrote a story. I'm not sure that's what he was supposed to be working on in class, but he wrote this story, and he brought it home and he laid it on my desk, and I picked it up and I read it, and I thought, this is a story. It was little, maybe, 50 words or 100 words, and this is the story that I've been thinking about, and so I began to write it. I actually wrote it as a blog. I wrote it one chapter a week for about 62 weeks. It's not that many chapters now, but and finally, a couple of months ago, we turned it out, and I still love the story, and I actually included in the book his little story that he brought home. He's asked if he gets part of the royalties, and I said no.
Maybe in your inheritance, kid.
But you need to go into writing and write your own stories, and then you could do that.
Awesome. I love that.
But it was different making the transition. Some things are the same, and of course, a lot of things, no matter what you write, some of the same things hold true. For my writing, and I have Christian friends that ask, how do you write all these horror books and that? I said, well, it boils down to, this is a battle between good and evil, and I'm very keyed into the idea of good triumphing over evil. In fact, I had one editor told me and said, you're not a horror writer because you're too much of a Pollyanna with all these happy endings. But that's the way I believe it comes out. So that theme kind of runs through all of my writing. I think they all kind of touch on that with a sort of a moral theme. The fellow that did my audiobook. Started out doing my Bayou Moon, the Moon series of audiobooks. It said there's a werewolf in this story, but it's not about the werewolf. It's about a moral decision the sheriff has to make. That's exactly. That's what the book about, and that's kind of the way my books run. And so in that way, this one follows that theme. It is. I kind of tried when I was writing it to be sort of Book of Revelation apocalyptic type writing in it. I borrowed some things from some of the visions in the book and the ideas about prophets and things like that are heavy in the book. One of the things that I found hard to do with it, and I've since read some fantasy books, and I find that I don't know, maybe this is a problem for me, but it's not for anybody else, is the internal language in the story. I wrote a series of Bigfoot stories a couple of years ago, and one of the stories is written from Bigfoot's point of view. And I've never had an encounter with it, but I've spoke with people who have, and I said, "Tell me how you know Bigfoot's intelligent." And it took a while for somebody to actually show me something that, okay, I'll buy it. And so I set out to write the book, and immediately ran into a problem. It says, okay, Bigfoot's intelligent. What does he call this? What does he call that? What does he call a house? What does he call a cow? What does he call a person? And, that was kind of is a bit of a problem for me moving over to fantasy, in that there was a great temptation. There are men and women, there's human beings in the book, but most of the creatures in it are not. And there was a great temptation to call the different species of people there man and woman.
Right.
And it's like, no, you can't really do that. And like I said, I picked up some fantasy books that kind of do that, and I don't say it's a bad thing, but to me it's not for me.
Yeah.
There needs to be some familiarity, yes, and that's good. I don't. One thing I tried not to do with my book is to introduce words and ideas and characters that required an explanation other than what could be explained in the course of the story. If it didn't flow naturally from the story, I didn't want to, put that in my book. As I said with the Bigfoot one I did, I'm not Tolkien. I'm not that ambitious. I'm not writing a whole dictionary and a whole language. No, I'm not going that far. But I did want the words and the ideas to be familiar enough that really didn't require a lot of explanation outside of the conversation. My editor did stop while she was doing the editing on this. Is this word right here? Is this a creature? And which to me, okay, yes, I said yes. This is a creature, and this is kind of what kind of. But she got the picture from the course of the story that, hey, this thing's sort of like an alligator. This one's sort of like a rhinoceros. This is sort of some kind of bird. Okay, which is kind of really close enough, and then I can add the description to it. But the other thing that I tried hard not to do, that I don't like to do in stories, not that I'm opposed to other people doing it, is try to have no superheroes. Mm. Nobody whose superpower is always going to save them. And I do that with the other stories besides the fantasy story, is that I don't want my heroes to be superheroes. I want them to be ordinary people faced with extraordinary circumstances. Sometimes circumstances that absolutely beyond what they believe, and they're forced with that. But so that I tried not to do that to not give any of the creatures in there such superpowers that they weren't going to be in trouble.
So I just have a question though, like with fantasy, because you have to build the world, right? You have to build the world. You have to hold the consistency and all the things. And I know a lot of fantasy writers, and they're really good at that. They keep like they call it their Bible, right? That they
Right,
keep
yeah.
up with all of the things. And I started writing an urban fantasy a couple of years ago, but it's been on the back burner because it requires so much thinking and brain power to just keep everything straight. And I'm like you, I am not a plotter. I am a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. When the story starts flowing, I just start writing. And when it's done, it's done. So how was that for you writing the fantasy and trying to keep up with everything when you're not necessarily someone who outlines what's going to happen?
I did find myself here and there outlining the world, the entire world of it. Where where this kind of creature came from in the world, and this one. Uh, I don't. I think early on I might have drawn a map of it, my own map for reference, and then later it was just kind of in my head, so I kind of let that go. But also a map of a map of the characters. Um, where's this character from, and to kind of keep track of the way they're going to act in the story. Because this story has more characters in it than most of my stories, so just the nature of the story kind of required that. Yeah, keeping track. Not so much planning ahead, but if I introduced a character or an idea or a creature, that I've made a note of it, that this is what this is. If it was, something out of the ordinary. And hopefully, I think I got it all straight. I very much trust my editor because she's very good at that, much better than I am at keeping everything straight about what day did this happen and what time of day did it happen, and those kind of things. She's great at that, so I didn't have any problem with that. There was a bit to sort of a balancing act in the idea of cultures and the world itself and the beings there, kind of balancing things that are familiar to us so that we can identify with it, with things that are different. And for the kind of for me, for the overall tone of the story and the movement of the story, I remembered reading C.S. Lewis, and I think it's Mere Christianity if I have it right. But he was talking about how people make a big deal out of differences between various religions or various churches. And his point was, and I did research it and look at it, and I found it to be true, was that the differences are generally overblown, and they are all more alike than they are different. And so that's what I kind of strive for in the story, that yes, there's some differences and there's some little bit differences in thinking, but when it comes down to the core values of every being, they still kind of value the same thing. They value life, they value peace, they value other beings as far as that goes, for the most part. I do have a bad guy in there that doesn't really care much about other people, but that's kind of still part of that.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think that building those cultures, you don't want to stereotype either. Like, you want to avoid the stereotypes when it comes to
right.
Humanity and that kind of thing. Even though we are all very much alike, we also have our differences, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some writers that I've read lots of their books. Very prolific writers, and I wrote a lot of books. And I did notice that later on in their careers, they developed what I called stock characters.
Yeah.
Characters they're in every story. They have a different name. They might have a different job. It's the same character.
Yep.
And I definitely wanted to, avoid much similarity between my protagonist in this story and the different series that I have. Although, it's difficult at times to do that, to make a difference between, because for me, I'm feeding myself into parts of this character. They're all bits and pieces of me, and so
yeah, absolutely.
I think there's only so much of me to go around. without saying the same thing over and over
Right.
again.
And it's your understanding of humanity. It's my understanding of humanity that I'm pouring into my characters. And then it can only go so far if that's, if my understanding is limited. So, which is why it's a good thing to get out there and get to know other people, to get to know other cultures, to get to know other races, that kind of thing. And just to see the difference so that you can infuse your characters with things that you might not have thought of before. Because I know for me that when I started writing characters, I refused to do a formula. Like there are books out there that are like, this is the formula, it's kind of like when you're preaching and you're writing your 3 points in a poem kind of thing,
Right.
I don't want to do that. That's not what my stories are. We're just going to see where the characters take us. And so, yeah, get out there and live a little and observe the world around you. And you will find that your characters can be more dynamic than you give them credit for.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And I've just, like I said, just the total pantser. So wherever the characters want to go,
Yep.
that's generally where they're gonna go.
That's
Um,
right.
which kind of brings us to the idea about that middle part.
Ooh, that's exactly where I'm about to go. Yes.
Yeah, because I'm actually right there now on one of the books in my series. I'm right there at that middle part, and yeah, it's kind of bogged down a bit. But I'm seeing some light at the end of the right there.
That's always
But
nice.
yeah, it happens, and
It does.
it happened. I've heard people say that it's easier for plotters because they have the story plotted out. That doesn't happen to them, but I don't know that that's true
I don't either.
because they still do it. They still have to deal with the middle of the story. They just do it before they start.
Yes.
They,
Yes.
they still have the same battle. What am I going to put in the middle of here that to make this story work? So the actual, maybe the writing, once they get to writing, it might be easier because they've got an outline they're following. And so in that way, yes, but it's not like they don't have to do that. They do still have to do it. It just happens differently.
So what do you do when you get there? Because I know for me in this current book that comes out in October, like I've written the whole thing. It's there. It actually goes to beta readers on Saturday, and that's what I'm counting on because I got to the middle, I wrote it, I struggled writing it. My editor looked at it and she was like, I mean, it's kind of slow. And I'm like, I know it's just, there's so much there, but there's nothing there at the same time. And so I'm counting on the beta readers to say, hey, just move this, like get rid of this, do, whatever. But I have to put it down and walk away. Like I have to just say, I'm done with this for now because clearly my brain cannot connect beginning and end right now.
I do that in a sense. If when I get in the middle and I get bogged down with something, I will put it down for a time. I try not to ever start writing anything else. That's a trap I've fallen into once, and I just have since been pretty good about keeping out of that trap because and I've told people who are writing several things like, yeah, the beginning of the story is all exciting and you're into it, and then you get to the end and you know what's going to happen, and but it's getting from one to the other. That's that's where the writing really gets tough. That's where it becomes a job, and you have to really work through that. And I will lay things down for a while, but not too long.
Yeah.
A lot of that is in knowing my characters. Like my Ed Landry character is a bit of a prima donna, so I found what I can do with that is I just start writing what I want to happen. And it's not very long before it's like, no, that's all wrong. This is the way it goes.
Yeah.
And, and they start talking again. Sort of like the director whose star walks off the set. And it's like, what do you do now? Well, you just keep on filming, and if they have a big enough ego, they're back.
That's right.
So, and that's kind of the way it works with that one. Yeah. And I've done that. And there are books that I've written. One I know that I wrote the beginning of the book about 4 times for a lot of that. Like I got the first chapter in, okay, I'm doing good, and then just immediately it was like, nah, no more. And so I just finally started writing it, and then it came to me. Okay, no, this is all wrong. This is the way it's got to go. And kind of one of the characters' arguments was, I'm not in here enough. This is my series. I'm supposed, I'm the star here, and you haven't mentioned me enough yet. So
I love it when they tell you exactly what the problem is. It's a struggle when they're silent.
yes. Yeah. When they finally get to talking, it helps out. Of course, the thing is too, if I have to go back and rewrite something because I had it wrong, I hold on to that.
Yeah.
Because it might be right in a different story, a whole different set of characters, and that idea, that scene might be something that's useful later. So I hold on to that. I guess I read Stephen King, something by him not long ago, talking about writing, and saying that the author is really more of an observer, more of a secretary than God. You're getting it from the characters and what you see going on, and you're just kind of writing it down, and that's the way it works for me. I mean, that's how I get going with that, and so. Like I said, if I start writing without them, eventually they come in and what's left over might be useful somewhere else.
No, I'm the same way. All of my books start with characters. And it's funny to me because that's actually the question that I posed on, I think it was on Facebook this morning, that I asked, what comes first, plot or characters? And for me, it's always characters, because they pop into my head and they're like, hey, we have a story. Why don't you start writing? And I'm like, okay, great. And so I don't understand when people are like, oh, I have this idea for a story that could just happen. And I'm like, but who's going to be in it? Like, I want to know who's going to be there. Who am I going to hang out with? Because I need to be able to see myself in that story in some form or fashion. So which character am I going to play in your story? Like, right. I need to be able to insert myself into it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That's, I think that's the whole thing with getting readers to actually see the story, is you've got to give them a place where they fit in.
I agree. I don't know how you would read it any other way. I don't know how you do.
Oh yeah, I've got to identify or fit in somewhere. A friend gave me a book to read a couple of weeks ago, and it's about a fellow who's a wizard, and he's kind of sort of a superhero type, in that there's nothing that comes up that he is greater than his skills. Which is all right. I mean, it's a good book. I actually like it. But I finally found a point to identify with. He says, because he's a wizard, whenever he picks up, phones or anything electronic, it goes haywire. I said, there you go. That's that's me.
That's hilarious.
We were out with some friends not long ago, and I was trying to do something on my phone, and my editor, who usually sits next to me during that, was busy talking or doing something else, and the phone just would not work. It wouldn't do what I want, and I just took it, threw it over my shoulder, and everybody's jaws dropped open. It's like, hey, if it's not going to work, I don't need it.
It's currently a paperweight, so
yeah.
Exactly. That's so funny. But yeah, no, I have to have that identification point. This is my role in this story, and I'm going to play it. I don't even have to be the main character. I could be the snappy sidekick. I'd be fine with that. Just give me a place to fit in. And so, that's, people always ask, are you in your books? Do you write yourself into your books? And I'm like, well, I guess in a way. But I try to make my characters, relatable, that anybody could be that person in the book. Not just me. Just because she's a psychologist doesn't mean that somebody else couldn't read it and be like, I want to be her, So yeah.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think that's why I really like ordinary people as characters.
Yeah.
Cause I've had friends say, it's amazing all the things you've done, and I think no, it's not. I'm as plain as can be,
Yes, exactly. Oh my goodness. Okay, Jack. Well, we are to the point of the show where we're going to flip the script, and I'm going to let you take over as the host of the show.
All right. Very good. I want to ask you a little bit. The authors. I think for a lot of it, and I tell our authors, a lot of your work begins after the book is published.
Yeah.
trying to sell it. Do you take your books to like local events other than book fairs?
So honestly, and I've been on the lookout for them ever since our conversation where the last one we had where we talked about book events and that kind of thing. I went to one and it was actually just this past March and it was very lackluster. It was not advertised well in my opinion, but it was in Tuscaloosa. So it wasn't a hard place to get. It wasn't inconvenient or anything like that. And I made a lot of good network connections with other authors who in fact have been guests on the show this season. So, I took it for what it was a networking opportunity, but
Right.
I have yet to find one that just made me go, also just the fact that, if they're outdoors, I don't want to take my books outside just in case it does rain because it's Alabama. It is what it is. Like there's always that chance
Yeah.
that it's going to get rained on. So no,
Yeah.
I haven't done more than one, but I would love to.
Right. Yeah, it's something we encourage our authors. I do it, and we do it as the publishing company. We take all the authors' books out to like craft fairs and things. That they're more than just book fairs where people are out, and sometimes we sell really well. But even I found that even in the times we don't sell really well, that in the next week or so following that event, we see Kindle sales go up, we see page reads go up. Because face it, if you can get my book on Kindle while you're there at the craft fair, you're going to say I'll go home and buy it because I can't buy it on Kindle here, or I can't buy it on Audible here. I've got to go home and do it. And I know we're in the business of selling books, but we also tell people, hey, if you've got Kindle Unlimited, you can read this for no more. I mean, you're already paying for the subscription; doesn't cost you anything else to read it. And so we do see people looking at our book. So, tell me about either your best or your worst book signing experience.
Honestly, I've only done that one event, right? I've only done, now it did get me invited to one in September. So I'm happy for that. That one is going to be up in Athens at the library in Athens. And they're doing like the Tennessee Valley, book something, literature something. I don't know, but I'm really excited about that. So I had one sale. I sold one book and I gave away one book because I did a giveaway. You sign up for my newsletter, you were entered to win a free ebook.
Right.
And so I had one person sign up to join my newsletter, so she automatically won the ebook. So I would say it was very lackluster in so many ways. That was the best and the worst, I guess. So it's fine.
Yeah, well, and I think every author has horror stories about book signings. I do definitely. Yeah. I mean, I had 18 books out at the time, and I actually did a signing in a bookstore, a used bookstore mostly, but I mean they did that, and people that came in, I think made it a point not even to look over to where I was. But, I felt bad about that, but it goes that way.
He's going to sell me something. Don't look.
Yeah,
the guy
exactly. Yeah,
cell phone.
Which kind of leads into my other question I have about being an author, and I know you write Christian romance, and
those are my first two. Yes.
Yes. Was it difficult for you to, or is it difficult for you to promote yourself? Does it clash somewhat with your Christian values?
It did at first. It was very, it feels very prideful and it feels very braggy. It feels like I'm begging for attention. And I finally had to tell myself that I'm just doing the same job a PR person would do, or I'm doing the same job a traditional publisher would put behind me. I'm just doing all the jobs. And so I'm just so happen the source of the promotion, and it's not somebody else promoting me. And so I did have to come to terms with that. I'm way more comfortable with it now. I've also kind of created a team and a community of people that I trust with my work to promote my work, so I don't have to do it as much by myself. And so that's kind of nice because they'll do stuff like we'll work for free books kind of thing. So,
Right.
I love that little concept that just kind of, I was like, let's see what happens when you form this team. And so far it has been Really, really good experience. So yes, I did struggle with it at first, but at the same time, if I don't talk about my work, if I don't love my work, if I'm not proud of myself for my work, why would anybody want to read it? So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I found that to be a huge struggle with me in the beginning.
hmm
It's like self promotion, that, like I said, there's no humility in that. And yeah, and I agree with that now. And I tell people now that I'm a shameless self promoter. I don't mind telling anybody that I write or about the books that
yes,
that I write. And like I said, I have had some help though. I've got a friend that kind of taken over that job for me
nice.
if he's around, and it's like you know I don't have to say anything. He's like, "Have you read Jack's books? let me tell you about." He's a writer.
Love that.
I did make
Those are
fun of
great
myself in
friends.
one story. I wrote myself into a story.
Ooh.
I didn't name myself, but it's me. So much so that the author is in a poker game, sort of a fantasy type poker game, in that he's had a heart attack and he's out of it, and he wakes up playing poker with the other characters in the book, one of which is Wild Bill Hickok, and he kind of like he's fallen out of his chair, and he gets up to the table, and he doesn't quite know how he got there, and one of the things he says, "Did I mention I'm a writer?" And and Hickok says, "Yes, twice, but we decided to let you play anyway. So sit
That's so
down,
true. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But you know what? I think of it as I'm not promoting myself. I'm providing excellent reading material for other people. So it's really me doing this in the best interest of other people who like books. So you
Yeah,
can flip it a
yeah."
little bit.
And then yeah, that's it for me. Help me get over that. Is I'm promoting my book.
Yeah.
You know, I, I don't have never had trouble before telling people I like this book. You should read it. I'm still doing that now. It's just that it's my book,
Exactly. Your name is on the
and
cover, and
so
that's okay too. Like it makes it even better in my opinion. It's more personal for somebody to say, I've written now, I will say, I'm very careful when other authors come to me and say, "Hey, I've written a book. Do you want to read it?" I'm like, are you expecting a review in exchange? Because
yeah.
I don't I
Mhm.
don't. I don't do that for other authors unless I know them and their work really well. And then I will do it for other authors, but I don't just accept anybody's book and say, "Sure, I'll read it for you."
Yeah, I'm kind of that way. It's like, is it something that I'm interested in? If it's
Right.
not something I'm interested in, I tell you no. I'm
Yeah,
really not interested in. I don't read that kind of book.
exactly. Or,
People have no trouble telling me that. I don't. I only read nonfiction. I'm like, okay,
this is not for you then.
yeah,
Not even a little. Well, that and also the quality of the writing. Like I'm so particular. If the writing is bad enough, because then I see this with a lot of self-published authors, they don't get editors to look at their work. They don't even really get proofreaders. They think I'm pretty good at editing myself, and then they put their book out there, and I'm like, what would have made this better? An editor, like. And so I don't
yes,
want to be the one to tell them that. So most of the time I'm like, I'll read it, but I won't promise a review. How's that? I'll give you feedback.
right. Um, yeah, I had a sort of a conversation with somebody not long ago. They were like, I want to write, and I'm on disability. I don't have a lot of money to pay for,
Mhm.
editors and all the things that go. Because
Mhm.
I was just at a book fair in Louisiana last month, I think it was, and the fellow sitting next to me said that he paid like $4,700 to get his book
Mhm.
self-published out there. Like, wow, I don't know how you do it. I never paid that much, but
Yeah.
I haven't read your book yet, so I don't know how it does. But they were, their question was, I'm on disability. How do I come up with this kind of money?
Mhm.
And of course, then the publisher in me kicked in and said, try a small press publisher.
That's right.
You know, you work for royalties. You're not gonna pay out a lot of money,
Mhm.
uh, and like basically the idea was, well, I can edit and do all this myself. And I said, well, then you should.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
where does the cost come in?
Yeah, no, I cannot edit myself. I'm too close to the story, and I like to use commas everywhere when they don't belong there. And so, no, I have an editor, and I do pay her, but the rest of the work I do myself.
I do not want to edit myself at all. I did when I started, but I learned that wasn't the way to go. My editor one time said, "Read this sentence," and he said, "And what does it say?" And I actually read it 3 times just to be sure. And I told her what it said, and she said, "No, it doesn't. Look at it again." It's like I read it the third time, word, and she was right. That's not what the sentence said.
You knew what you meant
So
for it to
I
say.
had to,
Oh, yeah. I do that all the
yeah,
time.
because
Mm.
to me, I just don't catch my own mistakes.
Oh, yeah. Well, because you know the story inside and out. It came from inside of you. And so I'm the same way. I'm just like, oh, no, why did yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm with you.
yeah, I know what they're saying right there,
Yes, exactly.
and I do, but that's not what I put on the page.
Exactly. Yay for editors. We love our editors. We appreciate our editors. And if you're going to write a book, hire an editor. Like, that's my PSA for today.
Oh yeah, definitely want an
Yes.
editor.
Okay, Jack. Well, let's tell listeners how they can connect with you and your work. And if you want to talk about the publishing house, by all means.
Yeah, just like I said, the publishing house is House of Honor Books. We are a small print publisher. We don't charge to print or don't charge for editing, cover design, any of that. Very traditional publisher. People ask, well, how do I make money then? How do you make money that you do this? And I said, we divide the royalties. That's how you get paid. That's how we get paid. So we're invested in your book. If we decide to publish it, we're invested in seeing it sell. Um, and we're very happy to see it sell. Not necessarily because we're making money. Some of our authors they're putting out their second, third. I think one of them even put out a fourth book already. And it was very hard for them at the first because they weren't selling much, and now they're starting to pick up. A lot of the beginning of the company, my royalties sort of supported the company.
Yeah.
But this last month for April and May, I think. No, May. The other authors have sold more books than I have.
Nice. That's
So
always a good
we're
feeling.
glad for that.
Yeah.
We tell them, when if you have a book that makes it big and you need a bigger publishing company, we're there for you. We'll we'll help out with all of that. And so we definitely we get out and do events and try to get our authors to come out to them. We're doing one at the end of July 21st. We're doing one here in Huntsville. It's called Nerdy Noel. It's one of those deals. It's not really a book fair. It's a sort of a craft fair for nerds. It's the way that's it. So, we've got several fantasy books we're going to be taking. So, it fits in well. And also, for me, more than the publishing company, although we take the publishing, I'm going to be in Deadwood, South Dakota in a couple of weeks for Wild Deadwood Reads, which is a book and author fair that takes place in June every year. Last year was our first year to go to that. We had a great time there, a great setting, and I'm going to be launching a new book just for that. I wrote a book for that book fair last year, and it sold pretty well there. I got to read one of my stories. It's a collection of short stories, and I got to read one of my stories on the author reading night, and I'm going to be doing that again this year. I was talking about the characters being caught up and putting myself in the story where the unnamed author had a heart attack. I did get a message that, did you really have a heart attack? I'm like, no. I told people in my blog here about a week ago that there's some things going to happen to the unknown author in this book. No, that didn't happen to me. I'm just having fun with it.
That's
But
right.
it's going to be called Dead in Deadwood. Because the author gets killed off again. But I tell people, I've had people ask me, "Can I be a character in one of your books? We name somebody after me?" Sure. And their immediate response to that is, "Don't kill me off."
Well,
I said, "Just because you die in my story doesn't mean you're out of the story."
that's right. Also, it's my
So
story.
yeah, we do a lot. We do a lot of that. Of course, we do our publishing company also has a blog on writing at houseofhonorbooks.com. If you go to the blog, it's all the blog is about writing. Last week, it was about we had two authors who were having going to a book fair. One of them was putting on the book fair, and the other author was attending. So they were both there, and it was about their anticipation about and their preparation for going to a book signing. The next couple of weeks will be sort of their story about what happened. So there are things on there if you're a writer that will hopefully will help you with your writing, or hope or at least encourage you to not give up, stay in there, keep writing, keep going at it.
That's great. And then are your books also on that website, or is there another place?
My books are, yes. All of my books are on there, and they usually appear there before they appear on my page, actually.
Nice.
But yes, they're all there. And like I said, I do some of the writings of the blog, but we share it with the other authors. So yeah, that's
great.
That's all there.
I love that because it's like one big happy family and community. And I love how you always talk about supporting the authors. You're not just sending them, putting their book out there into the ether and saying, now best of luck to you. Like you're constantly trying to build them up just, and their platforms and that kind of thing. So I appreciate that in a small press because you don't find that just everywhere.
Yeah, we like I said, we try to encourage all our authors. And generally speaking, it only takes a little bit of effort. I think on their part, we had an author that showed up for a festival we went to, and he showed up there, and he sold more books that day than almost all of the books that he had sold for that book so far.
Wow.
And that's, which helped him, but it also helped all of the other authors when they found out, hey, he went to this book signing with us, and he sold a bunch of books.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We can only wish and hope and pray.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. Well, Jack, I have one last final question for you. It is the big question. You've answered it once before, but that was a while back. So maybe your answer has changed. What is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else?
I would say that, and maybe this comes from my background, is that you should treat writing and approach writing as a calling.
Mm.
That it is, it's a part of you, and you can't really be you without it. It's something you have to do to find fulfillment and to find joy and peace. Not necessarily is it going to make you happy.
Yep.
It may not do that. It might make you sad sometimes, and it won't always make you rich or be profitable in a way.
Yep.
But it's. I feel like it's something you have to do. The Apostle Paul one time said that he had been apprehended by Christ, and woe is me if I don't do this. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way authors need to approach what they do. That absolutely, I have to do this to be me, and a calling will drive you. It'll drive you into places that you're not comfortable with, mm-hmm. Which makes you grow. And your writing should make you grow, and in the end, really define who you are as a person. Because, like we've been talking about, a part of me goes into all of that. Mm-hmm. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, writing does in a way define who we are.
I love that because yes, when I started, I always thought I want to write. I love writing, but it was not something I thought I could do this to make money or it could be a career. That was never really a thing until all of a sudden it became this insatiable passion, I guess, that it was like you have to put words on a
Mhm.
page. You have to start telling stories. And I started, and the next thing you know, I'm kind of obsessed with it a little bit. So, and that, but it has made me stronger. It's made me a better writer. It's made me actually a more fun person in all reality because I was fulfilling that passion deep inside me that had been put there a long time ago, but I had neglected it. And
Mhm.
so, yes, no, I think it's kind of like finding your soulmate, like once you find what makes you tick, like run with that because that is going to kind of, I'm not going to say Jesus will complete you. Like that will complete you. But when you find your
Mhm.
passion and start living it because it is a calling that he's placed on you, then you will find who you are meant to be.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jack, thank you so much. This was fun. I love that we got to hang out again, and I hope that we get to do it again soon. And maybe I'll see you at an event around town at some point.
All right, that'd be great.
Awesome.